If the person who once loved you now stands beside someone else, smiling like they've already won, would you walk away quietly, or would you make them regret underestimating you? Rain slid down the glass walls of the five-star Clarendon Hotel like silver ribbons, blurring the city lights outside. Inside, the lobby was a world of marble floors, soft golden lamps, and the faint scent of lilies drifting through the warm air. But the elegance couldn't mask the sharp tension coiling between three people whose lives were about to collide. Olivia Bennet stood near the elevator, her silk scarf clutched in one hand, her spine perfectly straight. Years of learning how to survive in rooms full of sharks had taught her the value of composure. Her dark hair was swept into a low chignon, and her soft beige coat fell gracefully over a black dress. On the outside, she was poised. On the inside, she was a slow, steady fire. The elevator chimed, its polished doors sliding open to reveal Ethan Caldwell, the man she had once vowed to love forever, standing in a custom-tailored navy suit. Time hadn't dimmed the arrogance in his smile or the effortless authority in his stance. But he wasn't alone. On his arm was Madison Reed, younger, flashier, wrapped in a crimson silk gown that clung to her like she'd been sewn into it. She was the kind of beauty that lived for attention. Glossy chestnut hair framed her face, and a diamond choker glittered at her neck. Madison leaned closer to Ethan, whispering something before her sharp green eyes locked onto Olivia. Madison's smirk widened as she stepped forward, voice dripping with saccharine poison. "Oh, Olivia," she purred, tilting her head in mock pity. "Still lingering around? You know he's happy without you, right? Happier than he's ever been." The words were meant to wound, and maybe once they would have. But not tonight. Olivia didn't blink. She didn't bite back or let her jaw tighten. Instead, she smiled, a small, almost serene curve of her lips that made Madison falter for half a second. "I hope you enjoy your evening," Olivia replied softly, her voice carrying no bitterness, only an unsettling calm. She walked past them, her heels clicking against the marble, the faint rustle of her coat, the only sound in the sudden silence. She didn't turn around, she didn't need to. Because while Madison believed this was a victory, Olivia knew the truth. The real game hadn't even started. Outside, the rain kissed her cheeks as she crossed the street to a waiting black sedan parked beneath the shadows of a row of trees. The tinted window slid down just enough for her to see Marcus Hale inside. Her attorney, her confidant, and the man who had been helping her orchestrate something that would change everything. The plan had been in motion for weeks. And tonight was the first move. She slipped into the back seat, the leather cool against her skin. The door closed with a quiet thud, sealing her away from the glittering hotel and the smug faces she'd left behind. The driver pulled into traffic, the city's lights streaking across the windows as they headed toward Caldwell Enterprises. The empire Ethan had built with her by his side, the empire he now flaunted with Madison on his arm. Marcus glanced at her. "She said something to you, didn't she?" Olivia's smile didn't fade. "She thinks this is about love. Ethan thinks this is about money. They're both wrong. This is about control. And I'm taking it back." Her mind flicked back to the early years, the late nights hunched over spreadsheets together, the sleepless weeks when a single deal could make or break their future. Back then, Ethan had been different. Ambitious, yes, but also grateful. Together, they'd built something out of nothing. She'd believed in him when no one else had. Then came the boardroom whispers, the business trips that were really escapes with Madison, the subtle way he started cutting her out of decisions. By the time the divorce papers were signed, Ethan had convinced himself she was gone from his world for good. But Olivia hadn't walked away empty-handed. She still owned a substantial portion of Caldwell Enterprises. Not enough to control the company outright. Not yet. But enough to stir the waters if she chose. And she was choosing tonight. Marcus opened the slim leather folder resting on his lap. "The paperwork's ready. Once you sign, we can call for an emergency board vote first thing in the morning. You won't have time to rally support." The car slid into the underground parking beneath the skyscraper headquarters. The air was colder down here, smelling faintly of oil and rain. Olivia took the pen, pausing only long enough to feel the weight of the moment settle into her chest. Then she signed with a steady hand. The sound of her pen scratching the paper was louder than the hum of the car engine. Final. Irreversible. She handed the folder back to Marcus and stepped out into the dimly lit garage. Her heels echoed against the concrete as they made their way toward the private elevator. Every step was a reminder. This was inside the elevator. Marcus pressed the button for the top floor. "You know," he said, glancing at her reflection in the mirrored walls, "most people would have just walked away." Olivia's eyes met his in the glass. "I did walk away. But now I'm walking back, for what's mine." The elevator doors slid open to reveal the hushed opulence of Caldwell Enterprises' executive floor. Dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a sweeping view of the rain-soaked skyline. This was Ethan's kingdom now, but not for much longer. Olivia moved to the long mahogany table in the center of the boardroom, her fingers trailing over its polished surface. She could still remember the day they'd first stood here together, signing the deal that had changed everything. She didn't linger on the memory. She was here to write a new one. Marcus set the folder on the table. "Tomorrow," he said, "you'll walk into this room, and they'll see you not as Ethan's ex-wife, but as the woman holding the deciding vote." Olivia's lips curved again, that same calm, knowing smile she'd given Madison. "Tomorrow," she said, "is the day they find out who's truly happy." And somewhere across the city, Madison Reed's smug laughter was about to meet the sharp edge of reality. The rain had slowed by morning, but Olivia Bennett's resolve had only sharpened. From the window of her penthouse apartment, the city shimmered in a muted palette of silver and gray, a canvas she was ready to repaint in her own colors. The coffee in her hand was still hot, steam curling up into the cool air as she stood barefoot, watching the streets far below. She had been here before, at the start of something big. Years ago, it had been with Ethan, dreaming of empires. Today, it was just her. And she preferred it that way. Olivia had not been born into privilege. She grew up in a cramped two-bedroom apartment above her father's hardware store in a small New Jersey town. Her mother worked double shifts at a diner to help keep the lights on. Money was always tight, but love was abundant. Her parents had taught her grit, the kind that makes you get up when you've been knocked flat. She excelled in school, winning a scholarship to NYU's Stern School of Business. That's where she first learned to read the silent language of power, the way a man's watch told you more than his words, the way deals were made in the corners of crowded rooms, the way silence could be more valuable than speaking. It was during her final year there that she met Ethan Caldwell. He wasn't the billionaire he would later become, but the ambition was already there, sharp, focused, and blinding in its intensity. They'd locked eyes across a networking mixer, and from that moment the connection was magnetic. Ethan had been charming in those days. He asked questions, listened to the answers, laughed easily. They'd built each other up, spending nights in his tiny apartment, mapping out business plans on napkins, splitting takeout boxes while running numbers for his first big real estate investment. When they married, Olivia thought she'd found not just a husband, but a partner. She poured herself into Caldwell Enterprises, scouting investment opportunities, smoothing over negotiations, and managing investor relations. She never asked for her name on the letterhead. She didn't need it. Her satisfaction came from watching their dreams turn into reality. But power changes people. The Ethan she knew began to fade. As Caldwell Enterprises grew, so did his ego. The man who once asked her opinion on every decision started making deals behind closed doors. The trips became longer, the dinners more frequent, the phone always in his hand. Then came Madison, or maybe someone like Madison had always been inevitable. Olivia remembered the first time she saw them together. It had been at a charity gala, Ethan introducing Madison to an investor as a rising talent in the luxury brand sector. The way Madison's hand lingered on his arm told Olivia everything she needed to know. The confrontation at home that night had been brief. Ethan hadn't denied it. Instead, he'd accused her of being insecure, of imagining things. The divorce had been clean on paper, but messy in every other way. Olivia had taken the settlement she was offered, along with her shares in the company, and walked away. She told herself she was done. But the truth was, a part of her had never stopped watching Caldwell Enterprises. Now, with Marcus's help, she had the chance to do more than watch. Olivia set her coffee down and walked to her desk, a sleek walnut piece near the window. She opened her laptop, pulling up the company's financial reports. Numbers didn't lie. And these numbers told a story Ethan wouldn't want told. Declining profits in key divisions, mounting debt from a rushed acquisition, and whispers among the board about whether his leadership was still worth the risk. She clicked through to a separate document, a list of board members who had privately expressed dissatisfaction. Some were old allies from her years inside the company. Others were newer faces who had heard about her role in Caldwell's early success and were curious to see her back in the mix. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Lunch with Harrington confirmed. Noon at the Tower Club. Olivia smiled. Alexander Harrington was more than just a billionaire investor. He was Ethan's biggest competitor and, once upon a time, a close friend. Their friendship had soured after a failed joint venture, one Ethan had mishandled out of pride. If Alexander was willing to meet, it meant he saw potential in aligning with Olivia. She dressed with deliberate precision for the meeting, a tailored navy sheath dress, a pearl pendant at her throat, and black Louboutins that clicked confidently on the marble floors of the Tower Club lobby. Alexander was already seated at a corner table, a glass of sparkling water in front of him. He stood when she approached, offering a handshake and a knowing smile. "Olivia Bennett," he said. "I heard you were making moves. Didn't expect them to be this bold." "Bold is the only language Ethan understands," she replied, taking her seat. Over the next hour she laid out her vision, a restructuring plan for Caldwell Enterprises, an injection of capital from strategic partners, and a leadership shakeup that would put her in a key decision-making role. Alexander listened, nodding slowly, the faintest glimmer of amusement in his eyes. "You know," he said at last, "if this works, you'll do more than embarrass Ethan. You'll eclipse him." "That's not the goal," Olivia said, though the idea was tempting. "This is about restoring what we built and making sure it survives without his recklessness." By the time they stood to leave, Alexander had agreed to back her. Not openly, not yet, but enough to give her leverage at the board meeting. Walking out of the Tower Club, Olivia felt the familiar thrill of being back in the game. It wasn't about revenge, not entirely. It was about the quiet satisfaction of proving that she had never needed Ethan to succeed. He had needed her. That night, she prepared her notes for the emergency board meeting. She read them twice, then tucked them into her bag. Across town, she imagined Ethan and Madison sipping champagne in some penthouse suite, laughing at the thought of her living a smaller life without him. They had no idea how close they were to losing everything. The next morning dawned clear, the storm having rinsed the city clean. But Olivia knew the calm was an illusion. In less than 24 hours, that same skyline would be the backdrop to a corporate war. The emergency board meeting had been set for 9 a.m. the following day. Invitations went out to all members, the subject line carefully worded, "Urgent strategic discussion, attendance required." Ethan would see it in his inbox soon enough. The shock would hit first, then the scramble. Olivia hoped Madison was with him when it happened. By early afternoon, her phone lit up with exactly what she'd expected. A text from Ethan. "What the hell is this? An opportunity to fix your mistakes. You don't get to decide that anymore. The board does." She could almost picture him, jaw clenched, pacing his office, Madison asking over his shoulder if everything was all right. And that's when fate handed Olivia an opportunity she hadn't planned for. Marcus called just after 2 p.m. "You're going to want to see this," he said. "The Clarendon Hotel. Ethan's doing a press appearance before the gala tonight, and Madison's with him. The cameras will be there." The gala. Of course. It was the annual Future Horizons fundraiser, the one event Ethan used to leverage for both business and social gain. Olivia had attended with him every year until the divorce, smiling for photographers, making polite conversation with donors. This year, she hadn't even been invited, at least not by Ethan. But she didn't need his invitation. By 6:30 p.m., the Clarendon's marble lobby buzzed with the city's elite. Men in tuxedos, women in gowns that caught the light like molten gold. Camera flashes burst in white-hot pops as photographers jostled for position near the red carpet. Reporters shouted questions, their voices a chaotic chorus. Ethan emerged from the elevator with Madison on his arm, the perfect picture of smug glamour. She was wearing a champagne-colored gown that clung to every curve, or the deep neckline daring and deliberate. Her hand rested possessively on Ethan's chest as he smiled for the cameras. One reporter called out, "Ethan, is Caldwell Enterprises planning any major changes?" Ethan's smile tightened. "Business as usual," he replied, guiding Madison toward the ballroom. That's when the crowd shifted, and Olivia stepped into view. She hadn't come to cause a scene. She didn't need to. Her presence alone was enough. Wearing a floor-length black velvet gown with a slit that revealed just enough, she looked every inch the woman Ethan had underestimated. A delicate diamond bracelet circled her wrist, a gift from one of Caldwell's earliest investors, who was now firmly in her corner. The cameras found her instantly. Flashbulbs erupted and the reporters pounced. "Olivia, are you here with someone? Is it true you called an emergency board meeting? Are you challenging Ethan for control of the company?" She didn't answer, just smiled faintly and moved past them, her heels clicking against the marble. She could feel Madison's gaze burning into her back. Inside the ballroom, crystal chandeliers bathed everything in warm light. Waiters weaved through the crowd with trays of champagne flutes. A string quartet played softly near the stage. Olivia accepted a glass from a passing server and positioned herself near a group of key donors who also happened to hold significant stock in Caldwell Enterprises. It didn't take long for Ethan to spot her. He broke away from a conversation and strode toward her, Madison trailing behind like a shadow. "What are you doing here?" he asked under his breath, his smile tight for the benefit of nearby onlookers. "Enjoying the evening," Olivia said, taking a sip of champagne. "Same as you." Madison stepped forward, her tone dripping with condescension. "You really can't let go, can you? He's happy without you, Olivia. Everyone can see it." Olivia's eyes met hers, calm and unshaken. "Happiness isn't a performance, Madison. You might want to remember that." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Tomorrow, whatever you're planning, it won't work." Olivia smiled, the same smile she'd given Madison in the hotel lobby days before. "We'll see." Before he could respond, one of the donors she'd been speaking to earlier approached, placing a hand on Olivia's shoulder. "Olivia, we were just talking about the new proposal for restructuring. I think it's exactly what the company needs." Ethan froze. Madison's expression faltered. The donor turned to Ethan with a polite nod. "Of course, you'll see it all tomorrow at the board meeting." Olivia excused herself, moving toward another cluster of guests, leaving Ethan and Madison standing in the middle of the ballroom, the sound of polite conversation humming around them. She didn't need to win tonight. She just needed them to know she wasn't afraid to stand in their world, and she wasn't leaving it quietly. Later, as she slipped out of the gala and into the cool night air, she could feel the eyes of half the room following her. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. And Madison Reed's smug certainty was about to be shattered. The morning of the emergency board meeting broke crisp and bright, sunlight pouring through the glass towers of Manhattan. But inside the headquarters of Caldwell Enterprises, the atmosphere was anything but calm. By 8:45 a.m., the executive floor was a quiet storm of movement. Assistants carrying binders, legal teams whispering in corners, the soft hum of the espresso machine working overtime. Everyone knew today was not a routine discussion. Olivia arrived precisely at 8:55. She stepped out of the private elevator in a charcoal gray pantsuit, tailored to perfection, the kind that spoke without shouting. Her hair was sleek, her makeup subtle but flawless. She carried only a slim leather folio, no clutter, no hesitation. Marcus Hale was already there, leaning against the glass wall of the boardroom, flipping through his notes. "Ready?" he asked. Olivia's eyes scanned the room beyond. A long mahogany table surrounded by high-backed chairs, the city skyline stretching out behind it like a silent witness. "More than ready," she said. The doors opened, and Ethan walked in. He was immaculate in a navy suit, but there was a tightness around his mouth, a tension in his eyes that betrayed the calm he was trying to project. Madison trailed behind him, dressed in a white sheath dress that screamed calculated innocence. She wasn't on the board, but she'd clearly decided to plant herself in the room as his silent cheerleader. A few board members exchanged glances at her presence, but said nothing. Ethan took his seat at the head of the table. "All right," he began, voice clipped. "Let's get this over with. Olivia, you called this meeting. You have the floor." Olivia didn't rush. She took her time walking to the opposite end of the table, placing her folio down. She looked each board member in the eye before speaking. "Caldwell Enterprises is bleeding," she said, her tone even. "In the last quarter alone, our flagship real estate division lost 12% of its market share. 2 acquisitions made without full board consensus, have already shown signs of becoming liabilities. If we don't act now, we risk not just a bad year, but the company's future." Ethan leaned back in his chair, smirking. Here we go. The bitter ex-wife lecture. A ripple of discomfort went through the room. Olivia didn't flinch. "This isn't personal, Ethan. This is about leadership, and leadership means accountability." She turned to the others. "I propose we implement a temporary restructuring, including an oversight committee to review all high-level decisions for the next 12 months. The words landed like a stone in still water, sending quiet shockwaves around the table. An oversight committee meant Ethan wouldn't be able to act unilaterally. It meant his power would be checked, and everyone knew it. One of the older members, Gregory Lane, cleared his throat. "Ms. Bennett, are you suggesting the current leadership is unfit to continue without intervention?" Olivia met his gaze. "I'm saying no one person should have unchecked control when billions are at stake. Not me. Not Ethan. Not anyone." Marcus slid a stack of documents toward the center of the table. "These are financial projections comparing the current course to Olivia's restructuring plan. You'll see that, under her model, we stabilize within 2 quarters and regain profitability by the 3rd. Madison finally spoke, her voice sharp. "This is absurd. Ethan has grown this company to what it is. He doesn't need babysitting from someone who isn't even part of it anymore." Olivia turned her head slowly toward her. "I own 12% of this company, Madison. That makes me very much a part of it. And today I'm exercising that right." Madison's cheeks flushed. Ethan put a hand on her arm as if to silence her. "Let's cut the dramatics. The board knows where their bread is buttered. They know who built this." Gregory Lane spoke again, more firmly this time. "We also know who was there at the start, Ethan. Olivia's contribution wasn't invisible to all of us." A murmur of agreement circled the table. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "So what's the endgame here, Olivia? You want my job?" She smiled faintly. "No, I want this company to survive you." For a moment, the air seemed to thin, every breath in the room suspended. Then another board member, a woman named Priya Desai, leaned forward. "I second the motion for restructuring," Gregory Lane added, "and I third it. Let's take a vote." Ethan's smirk faltered. He glanced at Madison, who shifted uncomfortably in her chair. One by one, hands began to rise. Some hesitated, looking between Olivia and Ethan, but the count was undeniable. By the time the final hand went up, the decision was made. The oversight committee would be implemented, effective immediately. Ethan's jaw worked as if he wanted to say more, but the words wouldn't come. Madison looked like she'd swallowed something sour. Olivia gathered her folio, her voice calm. "Thank you for your time. I look forward to working with all of you to protect what we built." As she walked toward the door, she heard Madison hiss under her breath to Ethan, "You promised me she was done." Olivia didn't look back, but the corner of her mouth lifted. Promises, she thought, were only as good as the people who kept them. The hours after the boardroom vote felt like the quiet before an earthquake. Olivia knew Ethan and Madison wouldn't take the loss lying down. She'd expected angry calls, maybe a few threatening emails. Instead, there was silence, which was far more dangerous. By Friday evening, the first tremor hit. Marcus called while she was reviewing contracts in her home office. "You're not going to like this," he said grimly. "Madison just posted something online." Olivia's brow arched. "What kind of something?" "Video. She's at some rooftop lounge with friends, and let's just say she's making comments about you. Comments people are already sharing." Olivia opened her laptop and pulled up the link Marcus sent. The video played in shaky, champagne-sparkling light. Madison sat in the center of a plush sofa, her white dress glowing under the string lights. A friend off camera asked, "So how's life with the billionaire?" Madison laughed, tossing her hair back. "Perfect, now that we don't have a certain someone hanging around." She smirked at the camera. You know, some women just can't accept they've been replaced. They cling to bored seats and old photos like it means they still matter. It's kind of sad, really. The friends giggled. Madison leaned closer to the camera, her smile syrup sweet. He's happy without you, Olivia. Happier than he's ever been. The video ended with a pop of champagne corks and the skyline glittering behind her. Olivia sat back, letting the silence fill the room. She wasn't hurt, not in the way Madison hoped. She was calculating. Every insult was another piece of ammunition, another mistake Madison made thinking this was just a game of petty words. "Don't respond," Marcus said. "You've already won the first round. Let her bury herself." But Olivia had a better idea. The following week, Caldwell Enterprises was set to co-host the City Innovators Gala, a high-profile networking event covered by every major business outlet. Madison, naturally, had been planning to use it as her unofficial coronation into New York's elite. Olivia intended to make sure it became something else entirely. She spent the next few days making quiet calls to key contacts, stylists, photographers, influential journalists. She didn't have to say much, just that she'd be attending the gala. That was enough to spark curiosity. The night of the event arrived crisp and cold, the kind of winter air that sharpened every sound. The ballroom was a cathedral of light and crystal, chandeliers spilling gold over white linen tables. Cameras lined the red carpet, the press waiting for their parade of power players. Ethan arrived first, Madison on his arm. She wore a blush-pink gown dripping with beadwork, smiling like she owned the place. Flashbulbs exploded as they posed, Ethan's hand resting possessively at her waist. And then the crowd shifted. Olivia stepped from her car, the long black train of her gown trailing like ink across the carpet. It was a custom piece, deep emerald silk under the black overlay, the color catching under the lights with every step. The neckline was sharp, the jewelry understated, her hair swept up to reveal the clean lines of her collarbone. The cameras went wild. "Olivia, over here!" reporters shouted, their questions tumbling over one another. Madison turned, her smile faltering as she saw the wall of flashes aimed at Olivia. Ethan's hand stiffened against her side. Olivia didn't rush. She paused for the photographers, offering a composed smile, before gliding into the ballroom. Inside, she was immediately greeted by a cluster of venture capitalists, all eager to speak with her about fresh leadership perspectives after last week's vote. She let their words carry just far enough for Madison, who was lingering nearby, to overhear. It didn't take long for Madison to make her move. She crossed the room, her heels clicking sharply against the marble. "Olivia," she said, voice sugary but eyes hard. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Really?" Olivia sipped her champagne. "This is an innovators gala. Seems like exactly my kind of place." Madison tilted her head. "I just hope you're not here to make a scene. These events are for people who are actually relevant." Olivia set down her glass, her gaze steady. "Relevance isn't something you get from sitting next to someone at dinner, Madison. It's something you build, something you prove." For a moment, Madison's carefully painted expression cracked. But before she could fire back, one of the evening's keynote speakers, a tech magnate worth twice what Ethan was, stepped up to greet Olivia warmly. "Olivia, I've been meaning to talk to you about that restructuring plan. Brilliant work." He ignored Madison completely, turning the conversation toward investment opportunities. Madison stood there, frozen in place, until Ethan came to collect her with a tight smile. They retreated to a corner, their whispered conversation sharp enough to slice through the music. Olivia didn't watch them leave. She didn't need to. The point had been made without a single raised voice. As the night wore on, she mingled with the city's most influential players, each interaction planting seeds for the battles ahead. Madison might have been loud, but Olivia knew. The most devastating victories happened quietly, in rooms where the other side didn't even realize the war had been decided. And Madison Reed had just stepped into a war she couldn't win. The Monday after the gala, the cracks in Ethan Caldwell's empire began to show. Olivia didn't need inside information to know it. She could see it in the news feeds. Market analysts were suddenly cautious about Caldwell Enterprises. A prominent business columnist wrote an opinion piece titled, "Is Caldwell's Leadership Slipping?" and quoted unnamed internal sources praising the new oversight committee. Ethan's smile in the attached photo looked more like a clenched jaw. Madison, however, wasn't one to retreat quietly. If anything, the gala humiliation had made her dangerous. By Wednesday, Marcus called Olivia with the warning. "She's planning something," he said. "A little bird at one of the PR firms told me Madison's shopping a story to the press about you, and she's not subtle." Olivia leaned back in her chair, her office bathed in the soft afternoon light. "What kind of story?" Marcus's voice hardened. "That you only married Ethan for money, that you've been meddling in the company out of spite. She's trying to paint you as the jealous ex who can't let go." Olivia didn't laugh. She'd learned a long time ago that lies could do real damage if they landed in the right ears. "Let her run with it," she said. "Just make sure we're ready when it blows up in her face." 2 days later, Madison made her move. It was at a charity luncheon hosted by the Metropolitan Women's Alliance, a networking event for New York's most influential female leaders. Olivia had been invited as one of the keynote speakers. Madison, of course, arrived uninvited, but managed to slide in on Ethan's arm, flashing that too-sweet smile as she worked the room. Olivia was mid-conversation with the CEO of a major investment firm when she noticed Madison drifting closer. The music softened as the event host tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin our next segment in just a moment. But first, a special guest has asked to share a few words." Olivia knew before she even turned who it would be. Madison stepped onto the small stage, her blush pink dress a deliberate echo of her gala outfit. She gripped the microphone with both hands, the picture of faux humility. "I just wanted to take a moment," she began, "to talk about women supporting women. Because sadly, in our world, not everyone practices what they preach. Some women cling to past relationships just to keep themselves in the spotlight. They meddle in businesses they no longer belong to, not to help, but to hurt." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Madison's gaze flicked toward Olivia, just long enough to make the target clear. "I believe true empowerment comes from moving forward," Madison continued, "not from tearing others down out of bitterness. Don't you agree?" The silence that followed was thick. Madison clearly expected polite applause. Instead, a voice rose from the audience. "I absolutely agree," Olivia said, and stood. The heads in the room turned like a tide. Olivia walked to the stage, her heels striking the hardwood with measured precision. She stopped beside Madison, her presence radiating calm authority. "Madison's right," Olivia said into the mic, her voice carrying. "Women should support women, which is why it's important to correct misinformation before it spreads." Madison's smile faltered, but Olivia didn't give her space to recover. "I was married to Ethan Caldwell for 15 years, Olivia said, her tone even. "During that time, I co-built Caldwell Enterprises from a startup into a global brand. My role was never decorative. I negotiated contracts, secured investors, and helped make the strategic decisions that built our fortune. When our marriage ended, I didn't ask for half of what I could have claimed, because I didn't need it. I had my own." She let the words hang before adding, "And since Madison brought up empowerment, let me say this. True empowerment is knowing you are enough, without tearing others down to prove it." The applause started softly, then swelled until it filled the room. Women nodded, a few even standing. Madison's cheeks burned crimson under the stage lights. Olivia handed the microphone back to the host, who was clearly fighting a smile, and stepped off the stage. As she passed Madison, she murmured just loud enough for her to hear, "Next time, think before you hand me a platform." By the end of the luncheon, Olivia had received 2 new investment offers and an invitation to sit on the board of a prominent nonprofit. Madison, on the other hand, had slipped out early, dragging Ethan behind her. That night, Marcus called, clearly amused. "Your little speech is trending. Someone filmed it and posted it online. Over 200,000 views already. Headlines are calling it the classiest clapback of the year." Olivia allowed herself a small smile. Good. Let them talk. She knew Madison would try again. People like her didn't give up after one failure, but each failed attempt was another brick in the wall Olivia was building. A wall that would eventually shut Madison and Ethan out completely. And this time, Olivia intended to make sure they never found a way back in. The fallout from Madison's failed public swipe came faster than Olivia expected. By Monday morning, the video of her poised, cutting rebuttal at the luncheon had passed 1 million views. Business blogs dissected it like a masterclass in composure under fire. And while Olivia had said nothing directly about Ethan's leadership, the subtext had landed. By midweek, Marcus sent her a list of calls Caldwell Enterprises had received from investors, not to pledge support, but to request reassurances about the company's direction. "They're rattled," Marcus said over coffee at Olivia's penthouse. "Some are already moving funds. The oversight committee you pushed through is the only reason a few haven't pulled out completely." Olivia sipped her coffee, unhurried. "And Ethan?" "Furious. He's blaming Madison for stirring the pot. But between you and me..." Marcus leaned in. "He's also been trying to reach Alexander Harrington, which is interesting, because Alexander's been taking your calls instead." That was more than interesting. It was leverage. Alexander's investment group controlled a significant block of shares. If he publicly backed Olivia's strategic plan, it would all but confirm to the market that she was the safer bet for the company's future. 2 days later, she got her opening. Alexander invited her to a private dinner at the Beaumont, a discreet, high-end restaurant known for hosting the city's most sensitive business negotiations. Olivia arrived to find him already seated, his tie loosened, a glass of wine in hand. "I've had half a dozen calls this week," Alexander said without preamble. "Half from people telling me to stick with Ethan, half warning me to cut my losses. Care to tell me which side I should believe?" Olivia didn't waste time. She laid out her restructuring plan again, this time with updated numbers showing the growing instability under Ethan's leadership. Numbers only she and the Oversight Committee had access to. Alexander studied them in silence, his expression unreadable. Finally, he set the folder down. "You know this means war." "It already is," Olivia replied. By dessert, Alexander had agreed to issue a statement supporting the Oversight Committee's work, and by extension, Olivia's role in guiding the company's direction. The statement went live the next morning. Business outlets picked it up immediately. Harrington Group voices confidence in Caldwell oversight measures. Stock prices stabilized, but not for Ethan's reasons. Everyone knew this was Olivia's win. Ethan didn't call her. Madison, however, did. The number flashed on Olivia's phone late that afternoon. She let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. Madison's voice was tight, almost shrill. "You think you're clever, don't you? You think you can turn everyone against us, but you forget, Olivia. I know things the board wouldn't like, things the press would eat up. Don't push me." Olivia played the message twice, then forwarded it to Marcus. "We'll keep this," she said. "Might be useful later." But she also knew Madison's threat wasn't entirely empty. Madison had been around Ethan long enough to overhear deals, to see the messes he covered up. And if she was desperate enough, she might weaponize them, even if it meant collateral damage. The tension came to a head at a quarterly investor mixer hosted in the top-floor lounge of the Caldwell building. Olivia had been invited as a committee representative. Ethan was obligated to be there as CEO. Madison, predictably, came too. The room was a mix of polished laughter, clinking glasses, and city lights sprawling beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Olivia arrived in a navy silk jumpsuit with a wide belt, her hair swept into soft waves. She made her rounds, speaking with investors and analysts, feeling the subtle shift, more eyes following her than Ethan. An hour in, she saw Madison peel away from a group and approach the podium near the bar. She tapped the microphone, drawing a hush over the crowd. Ethan, at the other end of the room, didn't move to stop her. "I'd like to say a few words," Madison began, her smile tight. "About transparency, about loyalty, and about knowing when someone's influence is more harmful than helpful." Olivia set her glass down slowly. Madison's gaze found her. Some people like to act as if they're still part of this company's heart. But maybe they're just here because they can't build anything on their own. Maybe their glory days ended with their marriage license. The murmur in the crowd was immediate. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, sensing the miscalculation. Olivia didn't wait to be invited. She crossed the room, her heels clicking against the marble, and stepped onto the low stage beside Madison. "You're right about one thing," Olivia said, taking the mic. "My marriage to Ethan ended. But my career? That's still very much alive. In fact, it's thriving, without the need to stand in anyone's shadow." She glanced at the audience, her voice steady. For those of you wondering, I didn't ask for a seat on the oversight committee. The board voted me in because they saw the value of my experience and the danger of letting personal pride dictate billion-dollar decisions. If anyone believes that's meddling, they're free to check the company's last 2 quarterly reports. The improvements speak for themselves. The applause was light at first, then grew. Madison's lips tightened, and she stepped back. Olivia handed the mic to the event host and stepped down, but not before saying quietly to Madison, "Every time you try to embarrass me, you do my work for me." By the end of the night, 2 more major investors had approached Olivia to express their support. The balance of power was shifting, and Ethan knew it. Back in his corner, Olivia caught a glimpse of him watching her, his expression hard to read. But she recognized the look. It was the same one he'd worn years ago, when a deal was slipping away. Only this time, the deal was his own company. And the person taking it from him wasn't a rival CEO. It was the woman he thought he'd left behind. The tension inside Caldwell Enterprises was thick enough to taste. 3 weeks after the investor mixer, the Oversight Committee's influence was starting to reshape the company. Projects were being audited, contracts reviewed, and the numbers were improving. Investors noticed, employees noticed, and most importantly, Ethan noticed. But instead of adjusting, he doubled down. Marcus was the first to catch wind of it. He showed up at Olivia's penthouse one rainy afternoon with a folder under his arm and a grim expression. "He's trying to push through a massive overseas acquisition," Marcus said, setting the folder on her coffee table. "It's risky, unvetted, and exactly the kind of thing the committee was created to stop." Olivia flipped through the documents. The numbers were shaky, the target company drowning in hidden debt. "If this goes through, Caldwell Enterprises will be in free fall within a year." Marcus nodded. "And here's the kicker. He's planning to present it directly to the board without committee review. He's betting he can sway enough members with promises of rapid expansion." Olivia leaned back, her mind already racing. "Then we make sure he can't." The board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Olivia arrived early, wearing a deep burgundy dress under a black blazer. Powerful but understated. The mahogany table gleamed under the soft lighting, the skyline stretching endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Ethan walked in 5 minutes later, wearing the confident smile of a man who thought he still had a winning hand. Madison followed, dressed in emerald silk, clearly there to gloat. When the meeting began, Ethan launched into his pitch. "This acquisition," he said, clicking through glossy slides, "will position Caldwell Enterprises as a global leader in the luxury real estate market. The opportunity is unprecedented." Olivia listened without interrupting, though she caught Marcus's eye, a silent signal that the trap was ready. When Ethan finished, Olivia stood. "Before the board votes," she said, "the committee has prepared an independent review of the acquisition target." Madison scoffed. "Of course you have." Olivia ignored her. She distributed the reports, the numbers printed in stark black and white. "As you can see, the company in question carries over $200 million in undisclosed debt. Its market share has been declining for 3 consecutive years, and several of its key properties are under legal dispute." The room shifted. Board members flipped pages, brows furrowing. Ethan's jaw tightened. "These are exaggerated risks. The potential returns are speculative at best," Olivia cut in, "and reckless at worst. We've seen this pattern before. Rapid expansion without due diligence. It ends the same way every time, in losses." A murmur of agreement moved through the room, and then, unexpectedly, Madison spoke. "You know," she said, her tone casual but her eyes sharp, "there's something I think the board should know about this deal." Ethan turned to her, a warning in his gaze. "Madison," she smiled sweetly, "relax. I'm just being transparent. Isn't that what we're all about now?" She turned back to the board. "This acquisition isn't just business for Ethan. He has a personal relationship with one of the owners. A relationship that's, let's just say, ongoing. And if the deal goes through, there's a substantial consulting fee written into the contract, a fee that goes directly to her." The silence that followed was deafening, Ethan's face drained of color. Olivia didn't move, but inside, she felt the shift, the balance of power tipping decisively. Gregory Lane, the senior board member, cleared his throat. "Ethan, is this true? Ethan's voice was tight. It's irrelevant. The deal stands on its merits. It's highly relevant, Olivia said calmly, because it means this acquisition isn't just financially unstable. It's compromised. Another board member spoke up. I vote to table the proposal indefinitely. One by one, hands went up. The motion passed with overwhelming support. Ethan sank back into his chair, glaring at Madison. She only shrugged, clearly pleased with the chaos she'd caused. But Olivia could see the truth. Madison hadn't done this to protect the company. She'd done it to punish Ethan for something personal. When the meeting adjourned, Ethan brushed past Olivia without a word. Madison lingered just long enough to lean in and whisper, "Looks like he's not so happy after all." Olivia met her gaze steadily. Happiness isn't about winning for a night, Madison. It's about not losing yourself in the process. Madison smirked, but there was no real confidence behind it. By the time Olivia left the building, her phone was buzzing with messages from investors congratulating her on blocking the deal. She knew the headlines would follow within hours. Caldwell acquisition blocked by oversight committee. The market would read between the lines. Ethan's grip was slipping. And as she stepped into the crisp evening air, Olivia realized something else. Ethan's last gamble hadn't just failed. It had given her exactly what she needed to end this war for good. And when she made her final move, there would be no coming back for him. The morning after the failed acquisition vote, the city buzzed with headlines about Caldwell Enterprises. Business channels replayed clips from investor interviews, all echoing the same sentiment. Ethan Caldwell's leadership was unstable. Olivia watched it unfold from her kitchen, coffee in hand. She didn't smile. Not yet. Winning one battle wasn't the same as winning the war. But now she had momentum. Marcus arrived with a folder so thick it could barely close. "This," he said, setting it on the counter, "is every questionable decision Ethan's made in the last 18 months. Contracts awarded to friends, bonuses paid without board approval, side deals hidden from the oversight committee." Olivia opened the folder, scanning page after page. "It's enough to remove him." Marcus nodded. "If you go public, the board will have no choice. The question is, do you want to end it quietly or make sure the world sees?" Olivia didn't hesitate. The world sees. He built his empire on image. Let's take that away. The plan came together over the next 48 hours. Olivia scheduled an exclusive interview with the Financial Herald, the most respected business journal in the country. She didn't leak gossip. She presented facts. Hard, documented evidence of financial mismanagement, all tied directly to Ethan. The interview was set to drop on Monday morning, but to ensure maximum impact, Olivia arranged for the Oversight Committee to hold a public shareholder meeting that same afternoon. If the interview did its job, the meeting would be the end of Ethan's tenure. Monday arrived cold and clear. At 7 a.m., the article went live. Inside Caldwell Enterprises, Leadership in Crisis. It was clinical, precise, and devastating. Screenshots of documents, quotes from anonymous executives, and Olivia's measured statements painted a picture of a CEO who had lost control. By 10 a.m., the story was everywhere. Not just business news, but mainstream outlets. Stock prices dipped, analysts called for leadership change, and investors flooded the company with calls. When Olivia walked into the shareholder meeting at 2 p.m., the atmosphere was electric. The large conference hall was packed. Cameras lined the back wall, and the murmur of voices felt like the low rumble before a storm. Ethan was already at the front, flanked by his legal team. His smile was brittle, his eyes scanning the room like a man searching for an exit. Madison sat in the second row, her expression unreadable. Gregory Lane, as chair of the board, opened the meeting. Today's agenda includes discussion of recent leadership concerns, followed by a vote of confidence in the CEO. Ethan stood first, delivering a speech about media bias and malicious intent. He painted himself as the victim of a smear campaign, never once addressing the specific evidence. When it was Olivia's turn, she didn't raise her voice. She simply laid out the facts again, slide by slide. Each number, each signature, each unexplained payout landed like a hammer on glass. "This isn't about personal history," she said. "It's about fiduciary duty. The CEO of this company has a responsibility to act in the best interest of its shareholders. When that trust is broken, it's our job to act before the damage becomes irreversible." The applause started cautiously, then grew until it filled the hall. Even some of Ethan's old allies joined in. Gregory called for the vote. Hands rose, one after another, the count moving decisively in one direction. When it was over, Gregory's voice carried through the room. The board has voted to remove Ethan Caldwell as CEO, effective immediately. The flash of cameras was blinding. Ethan's jaw worked, but no words came. Madison reached for his arm, but he pulled away, storming out of the room. Olivia stayed. She shook hands, accepted congratulations, and assured shareholders that stability was the priority moving forward. The victory was complete, but she wasn't done. As the crowd thinned, Madison approached. Her heels clicked on the marble, her eyes sharp. "You think you've won? Without him, you're nothing." Olivia regarded her for a long moment. "Madison, you've been so busy standing next to power that you've forgotten how quickly it moves on. Ethan's out. The investors see you as part of the problem. And without the company, what exactly do you have?" Madison's lips pressed into a thin line. She turned on her heel and walked away, her posture stiff. Olivia stepped outside into the crisp air, the noise of the city washing over her. The fight was over, but the story wasn't finished. Ethan had been removed, Madison was adrift, and Caldwell Enterprises was finally on a path towards stability. And tomorrow, she would show them all exactly what true happiness looked like. Because winning wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about proving she'd always been the strongest one in the room. 2 weeks after Ethan's removal, the city was still buzzing. Caldwell Enterprises' stock had stabilized, investor confidence was climbing, and Olivia's name was in every major business outlet. Not as Ethan Caldwell's ex-wife, but as a respected strategist who had saved a Fortune 500 company from collapse. The victory felt complete, but Olivia knew there was one last chapter to write. Not for revenge, for closure. That opportunity came in the form of the Women of Influence Awards, an annual gala honoring leaders in business, philanthropy, and the arts. Olivia had attended before, always as someone's plus one. This time, she'd be walking in as an honoree. She accepted graciously, and in the days leading up to the event, word leaked that the guest list would include several high-profile names, including Ethan Caldwell, who was presenting an award for one of the evening's sponsors. Madison would be there too. The night arrived like something out of a dream, a crisp evening under a sky scattered with stars. The Grand Metropolitan Hotel glowed with golden light, its steps lined with photographers. Olivia arrived in a midnight blue gown with a sweeping train, the fabric catching the light with every step. She wore no necklace, just diamond earrings that drew the eye to her calm, confident face. The moment she stepped onto the carpet, the flashbulbs went wild. "Olivia, over here!" Reporters called, their questions tumbling over one another. "What's next for you? How does it feel to have turned Caldwell Enterprises around?" Inside the ballroom, chandeliers shimmered above a sea of round tables draped in white linen. Olivia was seated at the front, alongside CEOs, philanthropists, and the evening's keynote speaker, a tech mogul whose company had recently partnered with her on a major housing initiative. Halfway through the evening, she spotted Ethan across the room. He looked smaller somehow, the sharp edges of his presence dulled. Madison sat beside him, scanning the crowd like a predator searching for a weakness. The awards progressed until Olivia's name was called. She walked to the stage as the MC read her accomplishments. Co-founder of Caldwell Enterprises, architect of the company's recent restructuring, and a dedicated advocate for affordable housing initiatives. Olivia took the microphone, pausing as the applause swelled. "Thank you," she began. "When I first entered the business world, I was told that success meant standing next to the right person. For a long time, I believed that. But life has a way of teaching you what you're really made of, and it's never in the easy moments." She glanced briefly toward Ethan and Madison, but not long enough to make it about them. "Success," she continued, "isn't about who you stand next to. It's about standing on your own, knowing you've built something that matters. It's about using your voice, not to tear others down, but to lift people up." The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, capturing her poised smile, the confidence radiating from her. When she returned to her table, the tech mogul beside her leaned in. "You know, I've been thinking about expanding our partnership. You have a vision this city needs." Olivia thanked him, feeling the warm weight of possibilities settle on her shoulders. Later in the evening, as guests mingled near the bar, Ethan approached. Madison hovered a few feet behind, arms crossed. "You've made your point," Ethan said quietly. Olivia met his gaze. "This was never about making a point, Ethan. It was about doing what was right for the company and for myself." He looked away first. "I guess you really are happy without me." Olivia's smile was calm, genuine. "I've been happy for a long time, Ethan. You just weren't looking in the right place." As he walked away, Madison stepped forward, her expression sharp. "Enjoy it while it lasts. The spotlight doesn't stay forever." Olivia didn't flinch. "That's the difference between us, Madison. I don't need the spotlight to know my worth." She turned back to her conversation before Madison could reply. The final dismissal delivered without venom, just certainty. As the night wound down, Olivia stepped out onto the hotel's terrace. The city stretched before her in glittering lights, alive and endless. Marcus joined her, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "To the happiest ending possible," he said, raising his glass. Olivia clinked hers against his. "No, to the happiest beginning." Below them, cameras still flashed, capturing the faces of the evening. Somewhere inside, Ethan and Madison were undoubtedly spinning their next move. But for Olivia, the game was over. She had built a life that couldn't be shaken by their noise. A life defined by her own choices, her own victories, and her own joy. And that, she knew, was the only kind of happiness that truly lasted. Because the real win wasn't proving them wrong. It was living well enough that their opinions no longer mattered. So the story has ended, our wonderful friends. And if you're still here right now, it means something in it touched your heart. Maybe it's that quiet reminder that real happiness isn't about proving someone wrong. It's about living so fully that their opinion no longer matters. Olivia's journey showed us that strength isn't loud, and healing doesn't always look like revenge. As the old heterodox wisdom says, the most powerful revenge is not to be like your enemy. We all get our share of betrayals and storms, but if we use them to build instead of break, we win in a way no one can take away. So I'm asking you, if this story stirred something in you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe so we can keep walking this path together. And drop a comment below. Tell me, what does your version of true happiness look like?
Thank you.